The growing calls for Republican Congressman Tony Gonzales to resign following the release of explicit text messages with a congressional aide who later died by suicide last year. This is one of those stories where we do caution some of the details to follow are graphic.
Congressman Tony Gonzales was defiant today on Capitol Hill.
I'm not going to resign. I work every day for the people of Texas.
The Texas Republican has been under intense scrutiny after allegations resurfaced that he had an affair with a former staffer. The staffer, Regina Santos Avalos, died last year by suicide.
So I really want to talk about this case. I want to talk about Representative Tony Gonzales of Texas because he is currently facing a mountain of pressure from his fellow Republicans and the Democrats over the recent harassment allegations that came out between him and his staffer. The key thing here to note is his staffer is no longer with us. She committed suicide and set herself on fire last year. And I think it's incredibly important we continue to keep these stories alive in the era of Epstein, and especially what is going on in the U.S. with Trump and the U.S. and Israel's war on Iran, which I will talk about in my next episode. But Tony Gonzales in particular, he is up for re-election in this November's 2026 primary. And recently, it has come to light that the staffer, who I will go into her story in a minute, who committed suicide, actually had an intimate relationship with this representative, which nobody knew about until recent. And so I really want to go into it because he will not step down regardless of all of the calls on both sides of the aisle, including the general public, to be fair, for his resignation. And that is simply because Mike Johnson and the House Republicans want to keep the majority so they can keep the power and they can keep feeding into the Trump regime's bullshit. So let's just get right into it. So what are the allegations against Representative from Texas, Gonzales? So just a little bit of background actually about him. He is married, usual suspects. So he's married, been married for a very long time. He has 6 kids, in fact. He has been in the House as a Republican since January 2021, and he is currently facing allegations that he pressured Regina Santos Avalos into a sexual relationship, which, as you know, workplace relationships are extremely inappropriate regardless of where you work, but especially on a taxpayer's dime. It reminds me so much of what's going on with Kristi Noem and Lewandowski and all of that, like jet stuff. I'll cover that eventually, but I'm a one-person team, so I'm doing the best I can. But Regina started working for Gonzales in 2021 when he got elected. So they've known each other over a couple of years. And according to the Bexar County Medical Examiner's Office in September of 2025, not long ago, they later ruled her death as a suicide. So when that happened, there wasn't a lot of media traction on it. And even like myself, I didn't know about it because there's just so much going on with this Trump regime. But now, because text messages came out, it's really effing bad. So when the text messages came out, I know I'm jumping a little bit, but I think it's really important to this narrative as I go forward. This local San Antonio news, I believe it's called the San Antonio Express News, last week, reported that they obtained Regina's text messages sent to another staffer in April of 2025. She committed suicide in September 2025. So a few months before then, it says, quote, "I had an affair with our boss. I'm fine." That's what sparked, because her previous colleague came forward with these text messages. So not only did her colleague come forward with these text message allegations, because no one's talked about it, hasn't been investigated. Her ruling of death was ruled as a suicide, with everything else going on, in my personal opinion, is a little suspicious. So in fact, when the staffer came out with these text messages to the local news, the local San Antonio news, Regina's husband, widower, co-signed it. And he said that he learned about the affair in May of 2024, saying he found text messages from Gonzales to his then wife that were very sexual in nature. Adrian is his name. Adrian said that he texted Gonzales and other staff members following the discovery. What happened? He said, quote, what then happened? They black sheeped her. They they severed communications with her. They gave her a month off. They essentially trying to push her out and make her quit. Don't you see a pattern here with the Epstein, with all of the victims and survivors? Oh, they're the problem. Aiden. And so Aiden continues and says that Tony abused his power. He should have held himself to a higher standard as a congressional leader. That is absolutely true. A congressional leader should not have not just congressional, anybody in power should not have sexual relationships with anybody within their staff, especially on our dime. The hell? It's what you see it with Kash Patel buying all the jets, and it's just sick. So within the batch of text messages that were sent to the news outlet, one of them read this. As you can see, Rep Gonzales says, then send me a sexy pic. Regina replies and says, I swear my life has been a telenovela for the past 7 days. You don't really want a hot pic of me. He goes, yes, I do. Hurry. She goes, is this a test? No, I don't like taking pictures of myself. And he goes, I'm such a visual person. So that was an example. So you can actually see it as I talk to you. Other examples of text messages revolved around after the sexual pic encounter. Regina actually at one point within the exchange said to Tony, this is too far, Tony. Please tell me you didn't just hire me because I was hot. He replies saying, no way. And there's other text messages where she's pushing back saying this is inappropriate. Please stop. And he doesn't. So going back to the husband, Aiden, in June of 2024, Aiden texted Tony Gonzales and other staffers from his wife's phone and said, she's been having an affair on me with your boss, Tony Gonzales, for some time now. So everyone's been aware of this affair. And so actually this week, earlier on Monday, Aiden told CBS News about his wife's alleged affair that this is something that shouldn't be fabricated. You ended a family, you as in Tony, ended a family because of your predatory instincts. So the husband, Regina's former colleagues have all come out to say, we understand she is no longer with us. However, some things are very suspicious and a real investigation needs to be put in place because what you all are missing is that Tony Gonzales had an affair with Regina, which was not made public, which had not been made public around any of the conversation when she died. It only has been made public recently. And so, of course, Gonzales denies. At least he did then. And he denied that he had an affair. And allegedly, he's been blackmailed into a legal statement. And so this Tuesday, CNN, Manu Raju, he is one of the on-the-ground reporters, that are at Capitol Hill. Oh my God, I'd love to do that. Just I'd be up in everybody's face. What is this? But he straight up asked, what is going on? And asked him more on the facts surrounding Regina's death and their affair. And at that time, he was still not coming public with it. He had what we know is he denied. And so what he said in that moment was, there will be an opportunity for all details and facts to come out. What you've seen is not all the facts, and there will be ample time for all of that to come out. I thought that was very interesting. And then this happened.
I made a mistake and I had a lapse in judgment and there was a lack of faith. And I take full responsibility for those actions. Since then, I've reconciled with my wife, Angel. I've asked God to forgive me, which he has. And my faith is as strong as ever. When you make mistakes like this, it's never easy. It humbles you, but it's important to kind of work through it all. I look forward to the ethics committee starting an investigation. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to provide all the facts and all the details that lead to exactly what occurred in the entire situation.
He confesses. He confesses that he had an affair, that he made a lapse of judgment, and that God forgave him. I don't know how he figured that out. And that his wife is cool with it. Ladies, ladies, what are we doing? All the women that stand beside the Epstein Files people, the Tony Gonzales people, why? Why? I understand you have 6 kids, but do you really like I listen, maybe that's harsh for me to say because I'm single, I have a kid. She's has four paws, but like I couldn't personally tolerate it, but I also do recognize that there's a lot within it with having 6 kids. She might be the stay-at-home mom, which is a full-time job. You know what I'm saying? People don't realize being a stay-at-home mom, from what I've seen in my family to my friends, it's a job. Shit, sometimes they might be like, I would rather do the do the job, go to work every day, which I understand. Listen, we got to be realistic. We all love our kids. You love your kids, you love them to death, duh. But you need a break. You need a break. You need a break. Oh my gosh, all single parents. I'm just not talking about women. Single parents on both sides. As women move up in the ladder, we're seeing a shift, right? Yeah, I that was my tangent about it's hard. It's hard to just leave. I get that. But this man, after this, once we do the autopsy, once we figure out what is going on with her death, it's very suspicious. And also it was in Texas during the red wave, which we're seeing that switch. So there's a lot of questions. So this week has just been huge for Tony Gonzales. He realized he's not the bee's knees with the primary. Several people, including his peers, is what I mean, have recently called for him to step down, including Thomas Massey. You all know Thomas Massey, one of the pioneers with Rokana and the Epstein files. So it's no surprise, honestly. I really love that about Thomas Massey, and he's a Republican. Trust me, I can't stand Republicans. I'm very progressive, but I give credit where credit is due because I'm not in a cult. And the one thing about Thomas Massey I will always give him, he is pro victim and survivor. And I think it's in this case, an investigation needs to take place. And so he said that he is joining his colleagues, Boebert, Luna, and Mace, like Nancy Mace, Lauren Boebert, and Paulina Luna, I think her name is, in calling for Gonzales to step down. He goes, where are the other men in the GOP? Trump is infamous for making terrible endorsements, and this is one, and it should be revoked. I agree. There was another Republican congressman. His last name is, I believe his first name's Timothy. It's Burchett from Connecticut, I believe. His last name is Burchett. And he said, well, the legal process, of course, but I think he should do the right thing and resign. He needs to go. Oh, he's from Tennessee. And of course, Boebert and Nancy Mace, who are big on the Epstein files, even though I can't stand them. And I think big on the Epstein files to an extent. They are starting to victim blame, which I'm not liking. But again, I'm going to let them attack the Republicans and attack their peers. And they are with the Epstein bullshit. So it is like a bittersweet, but they're all calling for him to step down. Chip Roy, who is also a Texas Republican, who is he lost his seat actually in the primaries recently. So he called for Gonzales to drop out of the race and threw his support behind a component. Yes. Oh, that's right. Chip Roy is running for Attorney General of Texas now. Even though with Tallarico winning the Senate, and against Jasmine Crockett, I actually hope Jasmine Crockett becomes the Attorney General because I do think that's where we need her with her legal expertise. If we can't have her in the Senate, let's have her with the Attorney General. She'll get to the bottom of the case. I guarantee it. Better yet, when Rokana runs, because we all know he's going to run for president and we're all going to vote for him, Jasmine Crockett should be the Attorney General of the U.S. Could you imagine? Jasmine Crockett is the DOJ. Pam Bondi messed that up. Yeah, that's the one. Since we can't get her in the Senate and they gerrymandered the Texas map, let's get her in as the DOJ. What happened now? As you saw the video of Tony Gonzales, he admitted to the affair. Now there is going to be an inquiry to get an investigation on the books into her death again. Once again, her colleagues and her husband have called for a new investigation. They have also said there's a lot of suspicion there since people did not disclose this affair. So I'd love you all to let me know. Is this suspicious or not? To me personally, I find this very suspicious. I find that she set herself on fire, which everyone's saying that's unlike her. That's not her character. set herself on fire. And then now we realize she had an affair with her boss, who is in power, who has denied. Kind of reminds me of the Epstein cases. And never really talked about her after her death, right? I'm personally very suspicious of this, and he needs to be investigated. He needs to step down, right? Ultimately, he needs to step down, but he won't because they need to keep the House because they're scared of losing the majority because they're all scared of going to prison. Because, you know, Trump, everybody is going to jail. Half prison, half jail. Because, you know, some will get away with it, get like 10 years. I'm looking for a lifetime. Lifetime prison sentence. We're definitely going to be paying attention between Brandon Herrera and Tony Gonzales for the Republican seat in November because I cannot believe he has not stepped down. And I'll be honest with you, he's not going to step down. I don't think he will. If he does, it will be because more GOP members pushed him out, but I just have a feeling he won't because they really can't afford to lose the House right now because they'll go into an election right then and there, and most likely blue is going to win. If not, it will be very close and very for the midterms. It's just so horrific. So, oh, and yeah, so the House Ethics Committee is actually investigating it. That's one thing I want to point out. The House Ethics Committee, which is, if you listen to me, you've heard me talk about the House Oversight Committee. So the House Ethics Committee is just another branch, and they're investigating the violations and rules regarding this relationship between members and staff. And there's one other thing I want to point out. Nancy Mace and Lauren Boebert and Paulina Luna, the Republican GOP women who are behind the Epstein files push, and they're very vocal about it. They let us all know that there's apparently a slush fund in Congress to hide sexual relationships going out to the public between the boss, you know, the congressman and a staff or whoever. There's a whole slush fund, you know, because people sign NDAs, they get paid out and they call it a day or they get a higher position. They have recently called for the release of who has used those slush funds. That actually got shut down yesterday in the House. And some people are like, well, why? Why would someone want to shoot that down? Why would some Democrats say no? Why would AOC say no to this? And I was a bit also caught off guard too. Well, I went on Twitter and AOC provided an explanation, which I think is really important for us to know these things because it really looks bad if you don't want to release the names of a slush fund. Especially with our taxpayer money. She said this because, and I'll just show you. So Molly Jong Fast is an MSN Now commentator, contributor, and she said, I don't understand why anyone would vote against this because, as you know, as you can see here, I corresponded to the resolution. We will vote with Rep. Nancy Mace today. If your tax dollars were used to settle sexual harassment claims against members of Congress, you should know about it, and I agree. And there were a handful of people, I believe only 60 people passed it, and like 300 plus people said no. I believe that some of the Republicans, in my opinion, voted no because we know why. But and this is my bias, I will say, to more progressive candidates like an AOC. And I was like, why would you vote against it? And so she provided an explanation. She says the idea is good. I won't read the whole thing. I'm going to skim it because I've gone through it. But she basically says the idea is good, but the text itself within the bill was rushed. And it also did go through a very weird process, which she highlights later. So she's basically saying the documents haven't been verified, so they would just be released without verification. So innocent people would get lumped in. This is different from the Epstein files. The Epstein files was under the DOJ. They were already there. And it was up to the DOJ to redact victims. As you all know, they didn't redact victims and they kept the co-conspirators redacted and released a lot of the victims who had not come forward. Another thing is, to our knowledge, there was zero victim consent or consultation on this. And I think that is so key. See, as you can say here, that's very different with the Epstein case, where the victims are centered around and consulted at every step. Here, the victims aren't. The victims aren't. They weren't consulted. And I think right then, and there's more to it, and I highly recommend you guys go check it out. But I think having the victims consent to this is the key, in my opinion. And you might be surprised. They may be very willing to, like the Epstein, because as you know, if it wasn't for the victims and survivors of the Epstein case, we would not be here today. So I don't care if it's a Democrat. I don't give a damn if it's someone I voted for. If you're using our money, our taxpayer money, to hide sexual harassment claims, you need to go on trial. First of all, you need to resign. You need to go on trial and explain to us why. And we should be the judge, jury, and executioner, because I personally think everybody should go to jail. If you are involved, you should all go to jail. What do these people's kids think? Because a lot of these Congress people are old, right? So I'm 31. Everyone is probably around my age. Their kids are probably around my age if they're in their like 70s, 80s, 60s, shit, 50s. And I would love to know what their kids think about these horrific people. Because imagine, like, if your dad's Tony Gonzales, how mortifying that is. So, yeah, I think personally, Tony Gonzales, Representative Gonzales, is guilty as sin. I think he needs to be investigated. I think that this whole case needs to be reopened by an independent investigator, and he needs to resign. He needs to resign for an inappropriate relationship with his staffer. I think it's more deeper than that. I'm sorry. This Epstein thing has got my mind running circles. I think it's a lot more than that. And Regina's family, Regina's husband, Regina's kids, she has a kid, she leaves behind a kid, deserves justice. I really wanted to report on this because I really want it to be talked about more. Are getting away with so much stuff, all because they love Trump. They're protecting pedophiles. They are also allegedly a part of sexual harassment cases. And they're horrific and think they can get away with it. And those days are over because I'm not going to stop talking about you nasty bastards. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding? Oh my God, if I was in Texas right now. The thing is, I wish one day I'm going to be on Capitol Hill. One day I'm going to be on Capitol Hill with my little mate. There's something else there. There's more to it, in my opinion. All right, the next video I will talk about the U.S. and Iran, U.S. and Israel's war on Iran, and how this all could have been prevented that the media is not talking about, which is sick and horrendous. And honestly, we might go into World War III, and it's disgusting. It's so disgusting.